Hello potential viewers, welcome to my channel. On February 7th, Dr. Wenliang Li, or in the native Chinese way of pronouncing it, Dr. Li Wenliang, was officially pronounced dead from the infection of coronavirus. As a pretty normal and some would say ordinary member of the Wuhan medical community, Dr. Li's name was remembered and admired as one of the first whistleblowers of the coronavirus outbreak. When the Wuhan government was actively suppressing the news of an impending pandemic that could affect the lives of millions and paralyze a whole city. Dr. Li was also once one of the first 8 members of the Chinese medical community who broke the news to a limited group of outsiders, who were later summoned and questioned by the local authorities and have punitive measures taken upon them. Their names were smeared on the news, as well as the Chinese social media. But there was no vindication for Dr. Li. He was smeared and detained, and then confirmed infected with the virus, and later lost his life because of it. And today, his name was sung by the International Medical Committee, and being remembered as a hero who initially broke the news lockdown of the pandemic outbreak. But if you look into Dr. Li's story, it was actually pretty different from what normally a whistleblower story in the Western context looked like. He merely shared his observation that there were cases he heard from colleagues that highly resembles the infection of the SARS virus, and warned his friends and acquaintances and colleagues in a WeChat group, and some in real life. He did not went to the press, nor did he report the news directly to any supervising official. He just told people he knew. But this was enough to get him summoned and later detained by the authorities. And at the time, he was painted as someone who intentionally spread the rumors irresponsibly. Even after the initial news break of this infectious virus that is in many ways similar to SARS, and many in the medical community speaking out about its concerning spread, the constant smear of those who spoke out never stopped. If they were in Wuhan or near the city, they are questioned with, "Why haven't you left? You must be intentionally spreading rumors." And if they were not in Wuhan, they are then questioned with, "You are not even there. How can you know it is a serious infection for sure? You must be intentionally spreading rumors." It is like you can never win. And worst of all, if some of them continue to criticize the deeds of the government and expose problems, they will be labeled as a foreign agent. From an outsider's point of view, especially in the West, where a relatively free press still exists for now, this picture is one easy target to pass judgment on. Right, how can a government just suppress the information like that? How can a government just mobilize the media as well as the shields to smear the whistleblowers like that? It is a repressive regime after all, a state ruled by the Communist Party. In the face of disaster, isn't there second nature to have a propaganda manuscript and whistleblower suppression protocol? Yes, if you are in the Western world, this should not come as a surprise, nor should it be. And that is an important point. Notion that socialist/communist state are almost always suppressive of dissidents and freedom of information and freedom of speech and thought should be burned into the backs of the minds of all people. But there is another dangerous, gleeful misinformation and misunderstanding of the situation that people who are even super critical of the Chinese government holds as true. That is, the people in China are not happy with it, that they yearn for reform and even revolution to champion their basic human rights. If you understood Chinese and had a chance to look at Chinese social media, you would probably be very disappointed that there are still many people defending the practice of jailing those whistleblowers after they are proven to be right, and the suppression of information and in general, dangerous speech that could destabilize the harmony of the society. And the government-controlled big social media accounts, as well as the state media, are propping these voices up with different media strategies. Yes, there is backlash against the practice of suppression of information and punitating those who broke the news, but such voices appear to be so weak and trivial against the state media's push to prop up the heroic first responders and frontline medical community members, and patting themselves on the back when hospitals are being built. We can already see a trend of 丧喜办, a Chinese web phrase denigrating the practice employed by the Chinese government, where tragedies are used to drum up positive sentiments in the masses, and resolution of preventable diseases are applauded to showcase the superiority of efficiency from the authoritarian government. And from all signs on the Chinese social media, majority of the people are just eating this up. And what if I told you things were a bit different just a bit over a decade ago? Yes, there was once a time, a short one at that, but a time where at least some of the information on the corruption of the government and governmental officials can be exposed to the general public. And people were actually a bit free to criticize the official ideology to a certain extent. That is when internet discussion forums started popping up in China, and Chinese versions of social media started emerging, even now banned Facebook and YouTube and Google were available for a short time. But then the censorship machine did not take too long to kick in. The Great Firewall was swiftly built, and the channels for the people to ingest information from the outside world were blocked, namely Facebook, Google, Twitter, and a whole bunch of foreign websites. And the governmental censorship and dissident suppressing machine started arresting those who dare utter unsavory words about the government and the Chinese Communist Party. The earliest case I could remember was a villager in Shandong province who wrote a sarcastic poem about a local governmental official, and later got sentenced to jail for it. And since then, cases of people being charged, sent to jail for posting negative views on the government or mere criticisms of the governmental policies became more and more common. So yes, the speech landscape in Britain today did not originate there. More than a decade had passed, and with the most notable of the political dissident and Nobel Peace Prize laureate passing away in prison, the protocol with which the government and parties with power to suppress the dissenting voices had become nothing but more systematized and more mature. If you got a chance to tour the Chinese prisons for political prisoners, you will find probably 3 generations of inmates there. And during such time, the volume of dissenting voices, as well as the extent of criticism tolerated on the internet, as well as in real life, have both diminished greatly, if not become almost distinct and immaterial. This is not only because of the growing abilities of the government to enact policies of censorship, but also from the generational impact of the heavy-handed censorship and information suppression policies, including but not limited to the Great Firewall. Similar to the history of many authoritarian states, the policies of information suppression and heavy-handed propaganda were put forward to maintain the stability of the regime. And since there being almost no tolerance for alternative political ideology, the discussion of political ideas and theory other than the mainstream ones propped up by the official propaganda machine is heavily suppressed. And this is enough to stunt the evolution of not only political thoughts and theories, but also any involvement of politics and self-governance by the local citizenry. This in turn has bred political apathy towards any sort of political system function and reformation, as well as a blind nationalism among the people, and a twisted sense of the world, where everything in China is going according to some grand plan, and any idea, or even suggestions that there are things wrong with the system are immediately dismissed as foreign propaganda or rumors spread by foreign agents. Online bullying and voluntary smearing of those who spoke out was extremely common, and even in some cases implicitly encouraged by the propaganda machine. The decay of trending political debate topics shows a pretty good summary of this. Around 12 to 15 years ago, the topics of how to establish democracy in China, political liberty and freedom of speech, religion and assembly were among the hottest topics, and even some politicians echoed encouragement of the participation of local politics by the citizenry. And around 5 to 8 years ago, the discussion of political liberties and freedom of speech has dwindled, and the discussion of democracy had become whether China's political system is just another form of democracy, and that no voting options for the public and a sort of auto-delegated voting system in China is actually a better form of democracy, and the rule of law and constitution was talked about as a form of Western propaganda. And cut to nowadays, the notion of democracy, rule of law, is not really talked about anymore in the public sphere. If they are ever mentioned, they are now linked to the theory that Western world is trying to undermine the stability of China with these Western ideals. And if you found these descriptions very familiar, which I assume you would if you pay attention to the politics in the West with an open mind, I would like to discuss it in a future video, so stay tuned. Coming back to our point, the decay of the quality of political discussion and man-made dominance of a single type of ideologies and theories, the ever-growing political apathy, and the maturity of the government's information and speech suppression means combined together, that it is not hard to see what will likely become of Chinese body politic. That people becoming more and more complacent, all the while feeling less and less connected to the functions of local as well as national politics. The government officials in turn stopped caring for the local communities and became only enforcers of the policies and agents who spend their time and efforts maintaining stability and showcasing their achievement of governments. Their accountabilities being held to their supervisors and not the people. And this is where the tendency of suppressing emergency information rather than reporting them come from. The occurrence of an incident shows badly on their resumes and thus will impact their chance of moving up the ladder. And it is this kind of complacency that enabled a system that mismanaged the local health and disease control departments in Wuhan, and the officials whose first instinct when being faced with news of an impending danger was to suppress the breaker and bearer of news instead of taking necessary actions to deal with the situation. You saw it in Chernobyl, and you saw it in the local government of Wuhan. This complacency is not limited to the people, of course. It is also prevalent in the whole body politic. The officials who cares only for their positions and chances of moving up the bureaucracy ladder. The model of serving the people is in name only with a politically apathetic general public that often cannot hold them accountable. What is more disturbing is that without a freedom of information, of criticism, and even discussion of disruptive and potentially dangerous ideas, the public became the enablers of the machine and in some way become codependent with it. The general masses wish for a facade of stability and harmony, thus tolerating the suppression of information, censorship, and uncomfortable truths. The government machine takes advantage of this kind of mentality and strive to create bubbles of a great China on the rise to keep the masses comfortable with their creeping loss of personal freedom. And here is where the Western elites, both liberal and conservatives, are happily ignoring that the general public in China have long become complacent in the censorship, suppression of information, and political dissidence, as long as the stability and harmony facade is still in place. Their yearn for personal liberty have become greatly quashed into almost oblivion, and is closer to a modern-day dystopia than a lot of those in the West could ever think. And don't think for a minute that this will not happen in the Western world. The things that had happened and are still happening in China are nowhere near as culturally or geographically unique. It should be a warning sign and a cautionary tale for the rest of the world. That will be all for my videos today. Hope you enjoy it, and I hope you see you next time.